A recently released government report is putting the spotlight on the state of mental illness in the U.S. Results of the survey from the Department of Health and Human Services announced earlier this month covers data in 2021 and found that nearly 1 in 4 adults had mental illness, with younger people in that group reporting higher levels. The report says comparisons to other years are difficult because of COVID. But in the time leading up to the pandemic, the level of mental illness had been rising. Given these numbers, it is no surprise that our next guest's new movie may hit close to home for many. Hugh Jackman stars in The Son, playing a successful workaholic New York lawyer struggling with reuniting his family after it falls apart. The movie releases nationwide this Friday. In a moment, we're going to talk to Hugh and co-star Laura Dern and director Florian Zeller. But first, let's look at a scene featuring this modern-day father and his troubled child.
I don't know what else to do with you, Nicholas. I'm telling you straight. I just don't know. I've tried to listen to you. I've tried to be there for you. I've tried to give you strength and confidence, but obviously none of that's any use. I mean, you really think you can just live your life like that, doing whatever the hell you feel like, getting out of school, never taking any responsibility, refusing to grow up? I mean, what are you going to do with your life if you're not doing anything? What's going to become of you? Naturally, you have no answer. Stop staring at me like that. What's the idea? Are you trying to intimidate me? That's not going to work. I can tell you that right away. Not with me. All right. I'm going to explain to you how it's going to be. Starting tomorrow, whether you like it or not, you're going back to school. Is that clear?
No.
Sorry?
Saying no, I will not go back to school.
What are you doing, Nicholas? What do you want? When I was your age, my mother was sick. I wasn't seeing my father anymore. I had money problems, but I fought on. I fought on, and believe me, most days it was no joke. And what has happened to you? What is there in your life that is so dramatic? You're not able to go to school like everybody else. Answer me. Answer me.
I can't deal with it.
Don't understand what that means. Can't deal with what?
Living. I can't deal with living, and it's your fault.
Wow. And Hugh Jackman joins us now. Hugh, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for coming on the show this morning.
My pleasure.
Wow. I have so many questions. I mean, there's so much about invalidation and trauma that is addressed in this movie. What compelled you to take on this project, to take on The Son?
I'd just seen The Father, Florian Zeller's previous movie, which he won the Oscar for, and Anthony Hopkins won the Oscar for, and I was completely floored by that. And I chased this movie down. I went and got the play and read it. And what was it? I felt a compulsion in my gut for the part as an actor. I mean, partly as an actor, but also as a father. And as someone looking around me, seeing an exponential growth in mental health crises and our inability, I think, as a society or as families, to understand it, to know what to do, to talk about it, to be vulnerable about it. I felt this really tackled it head on in a way I'd never seen before, and I wanted to be part of it.
I mean, even in that scene, you capture the inability sometimes of a parent and a struggling child to connect. And you just watch them go farther and farther away from each other when the parent is desperate. Describe, if you could, the pressures that your character was under before even things got out of control, just all of the different moving parts in his life.
He's a very high-powered New York lawyer who's just getting probably the dream job of his life, which is to join a presidential campaign, to be the main legal person on the president's or wannabe president's team. This is a huge thing for him. He works, I don't know how many hours, but I spent some time working with New York lawyers, and it's 80 plus hours a week minimum. He's just been divorced 2 years ago, so he's left the mother of Nicholas, who you saw in that screenplay by the incredible Laura Dern. He's now with a new wife and has a baby. That baby's not sleeping. His wife is struggling with that. And at the very first scene of the movie, no spoiler alert, Laura Dern's character, the mother of Nicholas, says, "I can't cope. and he comes to live with me. So now Nicholas is living with me, with a new wife and the baby. Laura's character, my character, now divorced, are going to co-parent. It's never really been discussed. And throw that into the mix, a child that's going through not just normal growing pains of a 17-year-old, but a mental health crisis. And it's just this mix of circumstances where my character feels it's his job to fix it, to solve it. His guilt over leaving the family, he thinks I'm the one. And that's really his Achilles heel. You see it in that clip. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to push him. I'm going to get him across the line. And what it needs is vulnerability and listening.
Yeah, and in a way, he's the worst at it because he feels it's all on him at that moment. And again, the desperation really comes through. For all parents, this movie will grip the heart. But for parents of kids who are struggling, it is, you all go there on mental health, not just a real crisis, but through the lens of a parent whose child tries to take his life, which is a whole different kind of hell and desperation for someone to go through. Can you describe how this changes your character and how his desperation to be a good parent forces him to confront some things in his own past?
There's a scene in the middle of the movie with Anthony Hopkins, which is one of the greatest acting days I've ever had in my life. But all of a sudden, you realize that the title of the movie, The Son, may well be my character, a 54-year-old. And that, in fact, what hinders us often in life, not just as parents, but in our relationships or at work, is that we, no matter what we've done or how many kids we've had, we're still, I'm a son, you're a daughter, or we're still children. We still carry that history with us unless it's been resolved, particularly trauma. And that's when you realize that my character, who had been abandoned and had a very cruel, harsh father, cannot bear the thought that he's not there for his son, that he's not the one who's going to fix things and be there and be the savior for his son. But there's a wonderful line in this movie that chills me every time I hear it, when the doctor says, love isn't enough. It's not always enough. It's the most important thing, but it's not enough, particularly around situations as serious as this. It takes people sometimes who have distance, who are removed and have expertise. So we need, for my character, it's just so hard for him to let go of being the one to solve it and to fix it.
Right. And your character, you mentioned, deals with abandonment, which parallels a little bit of what you have shared about your own life, which I'll get to in just a moment. But the movie really focuses on dealing with trauma, as you mentioned. And even I read you guys had psychiatrists on set because this was so heavy that it could be impactful negatively to everybody playing out in these scenes. Tell us when the decision was made to do that and why.
The decision was before the film started, Seesaw Productions, so we worked with I thought, showed great wisdom in having available for every single person on the film, didn't matter who you were, psychiatrists available to talk to at any time. And it was being used. I luckily have help. I have a therapist and who I was working with a lot through this, but not everybody does. And so there was one particular scene where, as parents, Laura Dern's character and mine have a choice as to whether to take their child out of the psychiatric hospital, which he's begging for, or to leave him in there. And that scene is very harrowing. It took us about 2 days to shoot. And I remember quite a lot of the crew members needing 3 or 4 hour break to go to talk to someone. Ooh. I was so proud that people put up their hand because in our business, the show must go on. No matter what, you just keep plugging on. And actually, I think that's not the answer. The answer is actually to put your hand up and say, I need a second, I need a break, I need to take care of myself here. That's
amazing. And on that note, you have been so generous in sharing your own mental health journey, dealing with your relationship with your mother. I'm curious how working on this project has impacted your relationships with people and your own work, your own mental health journey.
I have changed quite a lot as a parent, and I think my kids would tell you that. I have a 17 and a 22-year-old, and the first thing I try to do is to shut my mouth and to listen and to really try to understand what they're trying to communicate, what's underneath the words, what's really going on, try to get them to talk about their feelings. And then in my case, saying things like, I don't know, sorry, I'm feeling really angry and I don't want to be angry with you, so give me a second and I'll come back to you on that. Or I will say, sometimes I used to hide things in my own life that had nothing to do with them. I'm anxious about the opening night of The Music Man, for example, and I will now say to them, and did say to them, sorry if I seem remote. It's coming up and it comes into my head. I feel anxious. My mind starts to ruminate on it. So if I look distant or if I'm not really present, that's probably what's going on. It's got nothing to do with you. Things like that.
Leading with your feelings. Hugh Jackman, thank you so much. The movie is The Son. It's incredibly powerful, and it has an incredible cast. Thank you very much, Hugh, for being on with us.
Pleasure, Mika.